This is what you would see if it wasn't for the hard-working volunteers on Channel 10. But thanks to their great effort, this is what you get.
I think most of them hate me. Damn, I should stand with you.
Well, sure.
We can be on TV.
If you'd like a little news,
my,
Mr. Fowler,
I can't stand
the
with you.
Lasca
You're
Creek road permit this morning.
Oh,
So
good.
that all stopped.
I've been to a few strategy meetings and I find
Next time
he did? Said he forgot at my
Once again, I'd like to welcome many familiar faces who've supported us for the last month in various actions, either by being on site or just giving us your moral support. I thank you for being here. Woo! In case there are people who are questioning this in their minds as to whether or not speaking today will jeopardize any kind of court process, our lawyer said, absolutely not. It's a democracy, right? Yeah.
I don't know about that.
I didn't reply to that. I'd like to just tell you that there will be a few speakers. This is a pretty spontaneous event. There will be somebody from Lasca Creek who has information to share with us, and a few of our group from Hasty Creek would like to say a few words. What I'd like to do is to tell you about some of the people and the organizations that have been supporting us, besides yourself and besides the communities up and down the West Kootenay. Most of you know that David Suzuki visited our camp and he basically offered his support and encouragement for our cause. The Lasca Creek people have been amazingly supportive, considering that I assume they're somewhat preoccupied with their own affairs, so we give a special thank you. Yeah. We received phone calls of support from the Penticton Indian Band, from Stuart Phillips, who is the band counselor. We were especially glad to receive that. Yes. We also just got a phone call from a group that most of us have never heard of, from the Ontario Public Interest and Research Group, saying basically they support our cause. Some of the people who were arrested were Quakers, and I believe that most of us are well aware of their basic philosophy and how considered that decision must have been for them to join us.
Yeah. Well, I don't really know what to say anymore.
We've just heard that the road permit for the road from Harrapin to Lasca Creek was issued this morning. It seems it's obvious strategy from their point of view to go on the two fronts at once. It's the battle is widening. It's right down to the fundamental issues of do the people in this area have any say about what happens to their land, or do they not? The situation is that we have handed our lands over to logging corporations and have had no say in what happens to it. I know that everybody here has lots of spare time, and I'm sure you'll come to Harrop in the very near future to help us there too. Yesterday we put an injunction against the road building permit on this for this road. I'm not sure what effect it will have now, since the road permit is issued sort of at the same time as that petition is being forwarded. But we just have to hope that there may be some kind of stalling mechanism possible with that. I just really want to say that I think Hasty Creek has started something that is really important and really meaningful. And I say started because I think it is just a start. And I think out of that can grow something which is really important. And I feel it and I see it building now, that out of that issue and the related issues that are evolving here, that we can make a really substantial change in the way that we are treating our land, and also in the quality of the democracy that exists in this society.
And what I thought I would do with you is share some of my personal experiences of camp life, living at the Hasty Creek Blockade. For myself, and I know for my friends and neighbors who were there. What's that? Louder! Okay. For myself and for my friends and for my neighbors who came to join me, living in that camp was one of the best experiences of my entire life. Woo! We had somebody would show up one day with some pots, somebody would show up the next day with some bread, somebody came from down the valley, brought us fresh milk a number of times. We had our children were playing with more kids than they've ever seen together at one time in their life. The feeling of cooperation and of working together for something that collectively we believed in and that we needed to address in our lives gave us a feeling of power that I hadn't experienced before in my life. I really want to stress what Richard was saying is I feel from this event, I feel like we've been asleep at the wheel. I feel like there's been a slow erosion of the rights. Just as the soil is washing down into the creeks, our rights as human beings have slowly been eroded. The last thing that I woke up this morning thinking about silences. And as you know, when we were arrested on Friday, we maintained a peaceful and silent vigil. And that silence was broken only by the sound of some people weeping when they arrested small children and put them in the police cars and took those children away. Since that time, we've been pressing for an ear, for people to hear what has happened and to react in the political sphere. And there too, there's a silence, a different kind of silence. What we had on Friday was a powerful silence. What I hear, the silence I hear from our politicians is an embarrassing silence.
And I agreed to do so knowing in my heart that nothing I can say today would speak louder than the committed actions of 84 people Friday. I want you to know that my heart aches that those people had to resort to civil disobedience as a last resort to try and be heard, to communicate to our government that our rights as rural residents who depend on the water here are being totally ignored. I feel that we need to support those people in every way we can.
I know most of you people. The fact of the matter is, the leadership in the environmental movement and myself have not always agreed. There's at least two people here who I respect, who I have run against in order to articulate those differences. But I went to see what was going down at Hasty Creek, and I was honored and I was impressed and I was humbled, and I went back to say, what can I do to help? Because what it is you're doing here moves me and in some respects leads me. And the people... They said, you know, we might not have to get arrested again or blockade the road again if we could have an 11th hour meeting and attempt to come up with some mechanism for resolving this dispute. For decades, the trade union movement has had the right to some form of arbitration. The environmental movement simply was asking for what other people accept as a political right in this country.
Corky, not just the environmental movement. These are human beings living in place. I don't want you to tarnish us with a brush that could be construed by some people as environmentalists. Don't you do that too. We're human beings living in place.
Two things. One is, you always got to educate politicians about language. Feminists have been working at it for years. Secondly, it has never been, even in the struggles that we have been in the past, it has never been my belief that to call someone a member of the environmental movement was anything but an honor.
Yeah, it's starting to go the other way now. I mean, it's being used. It's being used by people against a distinct mentalist is we all need to be.
Yeah.
So the people,
Drop it.
the human beings living in place at Hasty Creek, and a whole bunch of unidentified supporters from elsewhere, were asking for a dispute resolution mechanism. I was asked to try and make a meeting with two human beings living in place, two members of the trade union movement from the Slocan sawmill, two members of the Forest Service, and two members of the logging company involved, Slocan Forest Products, before 7 o'clock Monday morning, or else get a commitment from Slocan that the meeting could go on without the road building going on. Step one, the human beings living in place chose their representatives and said they would meet anywhere from Castlegar to Hasty Creek. Step two, the plant committee at Slocan in the afternoon agreed to go to the meeting whether it was on Sunday or whether it was during their working hours on Monday. Step three, the Forest Service agreed to go to the 11th hour meeting and attempt to avoid the confrontation on Monday morning. And the last step, I went to the home of the individual who I shan't name, who is the manager of the logging company, and I said, it's ready, it's together, the people want to sit down. There will be a great leap in this struggle towards civility and resolution by Monday. All you got to do is say yes. I asked him my best shot, he said no. I asked him another way, he said no. I asked him a third way, he said no. I'm getting humiliated by this time. I asked him another way, he said no. I started to ask him another way, and he said go home. It was very clear to me by Sunday night that the people who are using you to get elected have allies. The industry has decided to use you to get the government elected and doesn't want to talk even when the human beings living in place decide they want to meet and talk. It's not about you in the way.
Hi. We tend to invite Mr. Dirks.
I see, but like I say, we were expecting people. This appointment's been set up for some time.
Hello, Mr. Dirks. We'd very much like you to come out and talk to the crowd here. We have a crisis in this area at the moment. That the people are feeling that their land has been taken away from them. They have no rights over what happens to their land. 84 people were arrested the other day and have been in court today. Lasca Creek situation is apparently going to come to the fore right now too. There are about a couple of hundred people out there who very much like you to manifest your interest in this situation. We feel that it's very necessary that you assert yourself at this time in this way now. So
well, actually, I think I differ on that a little bit because basically it is in the courts. It is a legal process that you're going through.
Well,
and,
that's one
really,
issue. Yeah. There's the issue of Lasca Creek, which is not in the courts yet.
Well, but basically, if I understand correctly, what you have there is a demonstration that has resulted from the protesters who were picked up at Hasty Creek the other day, appearing in court today. And so consequently, I don't, as a politician, certainly I understand water problems and I feel those concerns. I know what you're talking about.
I think the people out there would really like you to tell them this. I mean, it seems to me that we're feeling that we're isolated from our representatives.
If it wasn't related to the actual appearance in court today by those protesters, it'd be a different story. But that is a legal process, and politicians really should not get involved in it.
Should you get involved with 85 citizens being arrested?
Yeah. No, I'm sorry. They basically that's the court system. That's our legal system.
But the political system failed us due process, and that's what we're upset about.
Yeah, basically, though, when that injunction was requested, you basically, as a group, had the opportunity to appear in court and say why an injunction should not be granted. That injunction was okay, but the court saw differently and granted that injunction. And basically after that, you're in contempt. Any protesters that were picked up, unfortunately, they're in contempt of court, virtually.
Mr. Dirks,
that's a legal situation.
We understand those implications. Yeah. We're asking you to come and address the situation has gotten to this stage. Why is it that 85 people have been arrested here
it's very
in the Kootenays? If you're going to tell me that it's because they've broken the law, what's the real problem is.
The real problem is that the public process that's been offered to us and that your government has helped to create and to shape has utterly failed. Those people are standing out there on those lines, blockading that road. Not just 84 arrested, but well over 300 on numbers of different occasions, and we're going to see this again and again throughout the province until we've resolved a public process that's fair and that people feel that they can get behind. I want you to understand that public process that's been offered has totally failed, and those people are out there to tell you that. And 84 people is unprecedented in the entire history of this province. It's a record, Mr. Dirks, and that's in your writing, and you're not willing to come out and speak to this issue, then I have no confidence whatsoever in your government.
Well, and that's perfectly, that's your right to have that feeling if you like. But there is a process in place, and I understand that they have actually negotiated. Hasty Creek is not a new issue.
It's been going for 8 years, and the people at Hasty for a dispute resolution mechanism, and it has not been forthcoming. And everyone along the line has been saying, I am doing my job. I cannot act because the government gives me my instructions. You are the government. What do you have to say about that?
Well, I think that there is a mechanism in place that has been used. And certainly, if it hasn't been used properly, that was the opportunity was there when you were in court.
If you're referring to the IWIMP process, the Integrated Watershed Management Program that's currently on offer by the Ministry of Forests, it's been entirely rejected at Springer Creek. By the public, once again, it's been rejected by the Hasty Creek watershed users. And I see no room for success with that program as long as the government and the ministry continue to push this down our throats. It's not what we want. We want an effective dispute mechanism resolution.
There'll be more than 85 arrested at the next one.
That's true. Okay.
You've got to deal with this.
Howard,
And
you just have to pick up the phone and
Well,
stop it.
well,
Both road permits, Lasca
no,
Creek
I-
and Hasty Creek.
You can do it.
Richmond.
Well, there's a voice that I understood said that she would not negotiate any further with this government.
She's
on
asking you to
anything.
negotiate.
And therefore, so it's an about turn from what I hear today from that same voice.
Does that remove you, does that get you off the hook? Does that get you out? Because
I think it reveals, though, that there is more than one thing being said. It depends on the circumstance and where they're standing. As to
I
what
think
is
we're
being said.
talking about, in one voice, we're talking about water and we're talking about fair public involvement here in one voice. Do I hear yes?
We're talking about our lives in this valley.
Stop. Yeah. Well, thank you for showing up. I appreciate it. But I'm sorry, you are in the courts, and it's a legal system, and politicians should not get involved in it.
The Lasca Creek issue is you fast-tracked it. Thousands of people supported the preservation of this fragment of wilderness, and you fast-tracked it and took it out of the park by 90 process. Why did you do that?
Okay, you use the term fast track very
You
loosely.
used the term fast track. At least you
No,
were
I didn't.
quoted as
No,
saying.
that's right. That's a quote, but that's a quote in the media which I didn't make. I did not fast track anything. All we simply did was we shared and found out first of all from parks and from forestry, from environment, whether that was indeed designated for a park, whether they were interested in it for a park, and when they said no, we said okay, well then we will proceed.
What about the thousands
So
of
that's not
people who
fast-tracking
support
anything.
it?
That's not
There are thousands of
fast-tracking.
people here who support that park.
Howard, I just would like to let you know that this issue here is about people's right, their access to clean drinking water.
Yes.
And I want some kind of statement from you to address these people on what your government is doing about this, because we've had 84 people arrested on Friday, and they put their lives on the line to protect their water because they do not presently have effective public involvement, effective decision-making, and what happens
Well, I
in
guess
their
that-
backyard. So I'd like you to address these people on that issue. On the
Well, I
water.
guess that's where we differ. I think that there is a process in place, and I think through working with the forestry and the system that is in place, that has been in place for the last 7 years, I think that progress can be made.
There's no conflict resolution in that process.
There's no liability.
And I personally have participated in a number of integrated watershed management plans, and any input that I or my compatriots have had that didn't fit with the ministry's plans was rejected. And this is where our frustration lies, that the valuable input of the people that are directly affected by these things is ignored by the government, and there's no process for us to seek a resolution to the disputes that crop up in this. None whatsoever. The frameworks that were lined out in the Slocan economic plan of 5 years ago have been totally disregarded, and every time the ministry's pressed on those frameworks, we're reminded that they're only a framework, that there's nothing's written in stone, and the ministry continues to hide behind this lack of dispute resolution, and we're fed up. We've had it up here. 85 of us, women and children, stood on the road, and we refuse to be cast as environmentalists and UIC bums, because that's not the case. These are people with jobs, people with families. I'm a woodworker myself. I depend on the forest. I support logging, and somehow the ministry has set it up so that the people in my community are at each other's throats. And it's the ministry's responsibility to come up with some policies that are going to let us coexist happily together.
And actually, we've even come up with our own guidelines, with our own program for dispute mechanism, and that
Which
has
is-
been
and it
ignored.
won't be heard. We
can't get any time with you guys.
Which is what?
We have an 8-point program, and I can probably give you a copy of it right now. May or may not. We'll get a copy to your office as soon as possible.
I appreciate it.
I'm sure that you can get a copy from the Ministry of Forests or from Slocan Forest Products, since they are the recipients of that. One thing I would like to address is that you continually say that we have a process in order at the moment. We have been offered an integrated watershed management plan.
Right.
The Ministry of Forests and yourself basically say this works. In that case, why is it that the people in Springer Creek, who were involved in the IWMP process for 4 years and who knows how many meetings, withdrew from that process in July? Basically, they made recommendation to us not to be part of that process. What they basically said is all we're allowed to do is recommendations, and they've been continually ignored.
Business as usual.
usual.
Well,
We need a moratorium, Howard. Are you willing to offer a moratorium until we can come up with a solution so that people do not have to go out on the road and get arrested? Are you willing to do that?
Basically, no, I'm not. I really believe that there are other ways to handle this whole situation. I think that.
How about getting involved? How about getting
I
involved?
think that part of the reason, part of the problem has been.
Give them a chance.
Part of the problem has been a reluctance to get very involved in it. I think that, in all fairness, that you have to admit that even in the Springer Creek situation, there were modifications made in the cutting plan. I think that there have been modifications made in the Hasty Creek plan over the last 7 years. You're certainly looking at a much different plan today, I think, than you were 7 years ago.
Basically,
So
what you're
I'm
saying.
not sure that input hasn't been heeded.
Yeah, they made the cuts.
Two points. One is that when you accuse us of not being involved, I don't believe that you could look at 84 people and say
I'm sorry.
you have not been involved.
I thought I heard you say that the people that were involved at Springer Creek told you not to get involved in the
They
process.
recommended to us that it
And
was so flawed.
I'm sorry if I jumped from that to take it that you hadn't been involved. That was my
We have
mistake.
been
We've been involved
involved
for 5 years.
it's more than that. We've been going to meetings for between 8 to 10
I just made a leap from what you
years.
said.
So the question she asked still stands. Why are we giving a process that is not working? We have seen it not to work. We can only recommend. Our recommendations are ignored.
I disagree that they're ignored. I think
But
they
you
have been.
disagree. You have not been to Hasty Creek. You have not been to our meetings. You have not even heard the attempts that this group has issued forward to the forestry and to your government. You have chosen to ignore. Instead, you choose to go ahead without hearing any of the recommendations or giving us any chance for liability or any of the things we bring before you. Instead, you tell us that your actions speak better than words, and all we have is the actions that go against us and our lives and our water.
And yesterday, Mr. Dirks, the Arm Watershed Alliance issued an injunction against the Lasca Creek Road, and this morning, Val Petroni from the MOF informed Wawa that the road permit has been issued. Now, I would like to know how you're going to address that, considering that injunction was
Was the injunction served?
Yes. I believe that you need to address this issue.
Well, if the injunction's been served on that, well, then I'm sure the injunction will hold. I would expect any injunction that's served would be upheld.
Why do we go to the courts, Howard? Why
Because
are we relegated to the courts?
that's
There
our-
is no law in the courts, and your government has been there for how many years that has given us any rights in our own watersheds, around our environment. The laws are there to protect the economic interest and private land only. So it's natural that a judge has no way to judge in our favor. He has no law with which your government has given him or her to make that judgment.
Yes.
Yes.
6,000 people live in the Spokane Valley. 84 of some of those residents, plus some from the West Kootenay, but mostly from the Spokane Valley, were sitting up on Hewitt Road last Friday. If you are representing us,
This is what you would see if it wasn't for the hard-working volunteers on Channel 10. But thanks to their great effort, this is what you get.